I need to work on my background. Good morning and good afternoon, everybody.
Good morning.
There we go. Elizabeth and David, you made it.
Oh yeah, we did.
Good. Nice. I hope Addis is treating you well.
Yeah, so far so good. Yes, but we haven't even met yet. And I'll start at around 4:02, 2 minutes to give people to just join in. Hello everyone. Salam. I hope you're all doing well. And welcome all to our third multimedia webinar. Glad to see you. I see a lot of chat on the chat section, lots of interaction. Nice to see you, Ashabir. Okay, perfect. Again, welcome to our third series of multimedia webinar series. This is the third one, and we covered in the first one, we did cover, we did have a look at how Arizona State University academic media team creates high impact, scalable media to support online learning. That was the first one we had. And for the second one, we did cover the best practices for running a university-based multimedia studio. And in the third one, we are going to switch the gears a little bit. We are going to see how instructional designers, um, through the process of planning, designing, recording academic media content. And some of the topics that we'll cover will be how to use media, how to prepare scripts or slides, a recording, the strategies, modalities, formalities, more so on the accessibility side and post-production steps. Perfect. And as I mentioned, this is the final webinar series, the third one, and all the three sessions will be soon be part of the issue operation training course with hands-on activities and supporting resources. And I'll just go ahead and introduce our presenter for today. If you've attended the first two sessions, I believe Aubrey is now a familiar face. We'll have Aubrey Holland, who is our presenter for today. Aubrey is a multimedia developer supporting the study hall project and media design across ASU Online. And it's worth mentioning that Aubrey has had more than 7 years experience in multimedia developing. And as we continue with the engagement on the chat section, we also have the Q&A box for questions anytime during the session. You can upvote questions that others have asked. Just give it a thumbs up or like it, and the question will be answered. And of course, as always, the chat section will be more of an interaction site. We love to see you interact. We love you to see you share the ideas on and what you are learning through this multimedia webinar series. Otherwise, let's get started. I'll just go ahead and welcome Aubrey, and Aubrey can take it from here.
Awesome. Thank you so much, David, for the introduction. And hello, everybody. Welcome again to the third webinar in our Ishi Academic Media webinar series. This webinar, as David mentioned, will be going over the best practices for designing and recording academic media. And if you were here for the last webinar, then you know how that one was focused more on the multimedia developer role, whereas this one is going to focus more on the instructor and instructional designer's role in course media creation. All right, so before we get started, I know we have a poll for the audience today with a couple questions. So if we could go ahead and get that out to everyone. The first question is, again, I would like to just know, what is your current role at your institutions? This is just to help get a sense of where everybody's at today in the audience. And then the second question that we have for you all to try to answer is, when creating course media, what should be your primary goal? We've got lots of great options here. Making quality accessible, content, ensuring the media enhances course objectives, improve instructor presence, making scalable, reusable media, and then, of course, our lovely all above option. And then it looks like we've got awesome, primarily faculty in the audience, some instructional designers, some media developers, and then we've got some other folks here. That's great to see. And then, okay, awesome. Yep, good to see. The correct answer is all of the above. So they're all great options, but they all do, in fact, come together to be the primary goal for why we want to create our course media. Great. Thank you all for filling out the poll. Good to see. So let's dive a little bit more into course media creation from the instructor and ID perspective. So I know I went over the impact of media in the first webinar, but I wanted to touch on that point again because it really is important and beneficial to have instructor curated and created content throughout an online course. It helps provide the student with that instructor presence that we feel is really crucial for online student success. So this is just the flow that we see works for improving student success. Now, the instructor is not going to be creating media for their course alone, of course. That's where the partnership between instructor, instructional designers, and media developers come into play. The instructor's role in media creation is to identify where they need to add media. An instructional designer or media developer can assist with this phase as the instructor may not know the capabilities for transforming their content into media. That's when, you can pull in your ID and be like, well, I know we have our module lectures, but what else could I do with maybe adding in, a panel discussion with an expert that I know in the field, or something, to that degree. Always feel free to stay connected with these other people on these teams because it's really going to help make the course media creation process go a lot more smoother. Um, However, we do say that the instructor should be the one to come up with the base needs for, if they need main lecture content needed, they have lectures for modules, say 1 through 5, and they need so many videos. That's really going to be on them to be like, hey, I need at least this for the main piece of my course. And then the instructional designer's role is really to go in there and make sure, of course, that it aligns with the overall course objectives, but also to assist if, there's any other different types of media that they would want to do instead of just like your basic green screen lecture. So the instructional designer, or ID as we call them, is kind of more of a project manager in this process. They're there to help the instructor facilitate the new course media. And that, that may also include linking them to the media developer and showing them the media possibilities for the lecture content. But IDs are also there to help the instructors just get a little bit more used to the studio and recording resources. They're kind of like that bridge person before the instructor gets to work with the media developer. Now, that's not to say you can't pull in a media developer sooner than this point, but that's kind of how we work with our IDs and instructors. And then media developers can help with how to best approach the media content needed for a course. So they're the ones that are going to work in the media studio with the instructor directly to record that lecture content. All right, so let's go a little bit more into forming a media strategy for your course. Before booking a studio appointment, you'll really need to have a media game plan. You'll want to think about what types of media do you need? How much do you need for your course? It's really important to plan all of this out before booking studio appointments because the media studios will be very busy. Um, and sometimes they just won't be able to accommodate, if you maybe rushed some lecture videos and you missed some content, they might not always be able to accommodate that in maybe the timely manner that you need if you're in a rush because maybe courses are going live before a semester starts. So we really just encourage instructors to be proactive with having everything in place before they make that studio appointment. So when planning out your course media, you'll want to contextualize it. How would it align with your course objectives? What are the goals of the media? Are some good questions to ask. You'll also need to collect and compare resources for your media. The instructors are really the subject matter experts for their courses, so they need to be the ones choosing specific imagery for a video or graphic reference. They'll want to gather any specific materials that would be needed for media creation. And this might include websites, needed for screen captures, specific imagery or articles that they want to show, really anything that they feel is necessary to show students. They should gather that beforehand so the media developers have access to all the assets that they need before developing your media. Take a little sip of water. So you'll also want to have some resource considerations when planning your course media. You're going to want to determine the scope. Is it going to be worth the value versus time investment? And I mean, this question we really ask when we have maybe a larger special project that we want to try something new outside of the standard green screen lecture. You'll also want to consider time constraints. If your course is going to go live in a month or so, or even sooner, you might not have as much time to plan out, like a really elaborate panel discussion with experts, or, an elaborate set that you would want to talk on. You might just have to, I don't want to say settle, but just stick with what works and stick with the standard. And then that's why we always want you to be proactive with planning your media so you do have time to go a little bit above and beyond if that is what you want to do for your course. And then, of course, there are also design considerations. You'll want to choose the best media type for the content. Ensure that there's instructor presence in the course by having the instructor be present throughout the course media. It really does make a difference between having, like a voiceover of your instructor and then some B-roll over it versus having the actual instructor's face being shown and being present on screen so the students can see who is teaching them. You'll also want to think about how students engage with the media added to your course. What sort of interaction and engagement are you encouraging through your course media? And you'll also want to ensure recorded media is evergreen. So you can reuse it throughout semesters, and this is really going to be a huge time saver in the long run. Lastly, students want quality media in their course. If they're paying for an online educational experience, it should be worth the money and time, which is why it's important to utilize your media studios and your media developers to ensure your course media is high quality. So I've mentioned a little bit about making your course more interactive as opposed to just having the standard, videos. I mean, lecture videos is necessary and great, but we always want to think a little bit more ahead and how can we make this even more interactive and engaging. There are many ways you can do this. Some may require some financial assistance because you'll need to get like a subscription if you want to use something like PlayPosit. With PlayPosit, you can add assessment questions to specific time codes with time codes within a lecture video, and this really aids in interactivity and creates a more engaging learning experience when watching a video instead of it being just like a passive experience for the student. But I will say there are a lot of other ways that don't require like an extra subscription to something that you can try to just make the way a student goes through the course and the media, you can try to make it a little bit more interactive, in the sense of you can utilize your course media, as in like videos, by even just linking in a specific time code. So I know you can like link videos into, say, if there's like an article or if a student is going through an assignment, you could link to a specific time in a video you have recorded. So that'll just give students, they can go to that link and then it'll take them to that video that's a part of your course already. It may just be something that they watched earlier and now they're taking an assessment for it. And then it'll just take them to that point in that video that doesn't necessarily give them the answer, but gives them enough information for them to figure out the answer on their own. So there's just lots of other creative ways you can try to think about, okay, how can we utilize our media outside of it just being like a passive video for the students to watch? And then, of course, there are some accessibility considerations when designing your course media. We really want to avoid cognitive overload, only adding imagery when necessary, minimizing the amount of text on a screen or a slide, and being really as clear and concise as you can in content delivery. Of course, we want to keep in mind the universal design for learning principles. And this is really just anticipating all of the diverse needs for all students from the start, rather than providing accommodations for student requests afterwards. So it's just being like ahead of the game. And then this approach really benefits everyone, not just only students with disabilities, but also students with different learning styles. Because we know not everybody, learns the same, and there's also like cultural differences. So there's just a lot of considerations here to keep in mind. All right. So now let's talk a little bit more about the types of media instructors and instructional designers should be aware of when planning out their course media. So I know I've mentioned evergreen media before, but I haven't really dived too much into it yet. So what is it? Evergreen media stays relevant for a long time, regardless of current events or trends. It's really content that can be reused semester upon semester, unless, there's some sort of significant change in the knowledge or main content. But really, with this, we just want instructors to keep in mind to avoid mentioning due dates and, the date that you're recording the video. There's no need to necessarily say that. We want to make sure you can not have to record necessarily the same video, semester upon semester. We would love to have all of this content be reusable because that's just such a huge time saver. And really, this is going to be your main lecture content, should be evergreen content, and any formal media, because formal media does take that extra step in utilizing your media developers, you're utilizing a media studio. So you want to make sure you're utilizing everybody's time, including your own. So why not make your content evergreen as opposed to accidentally sliding in some dates that might be unnecessary? Unless, of course, it's like a history course, dates are necessary then, but I'm talking about, oh, today's Tuesday on August 26, 2025, and like this is what happened in the political space. So, like stuff like that, you really just want to avoid, especially with your main lecture content. So just to go a little bit into again what formal media is, it's your high production quality media, of course, usually produced by an academic media team. Your introduction videos, your main lecture content. These are going to be, of course, all of your green screen lectures, demos, labs, interviews, anything that's going to be using the studio and that media team. And benefits of utilizing formal media throughout your course is the media team will handle the production and editing, which is a huge time saver unless you're, individually very interested. I know you all are super busy though with designing the actual course and you've got a lot of other things going on. So why not let this piece be handled by the professionals in that space? So media team handles production editing, which is always great. Big time saver for instructors on that front alone. You can also increase your accessibility of your content for students by having the media team handle it, just so they ensure, captions are in place, accessibility with the text and the imagery and everything. They can kind of just make sure that that's all in line as they're creating your media. And overall, it's just going to be higher production value. It's going to look better. There's more creative possibilities that you can do when you utilize your formal media. And of course, this is best for evergreen content that we just mentioned. Now, there is also a space for informal media. So this is usually media that's created by the instructor to supplement formal studio production efforts. We do understand not everybody is able to make it into the media studio. whether that be, your location or time. Of course, we always encourage, if you can, try to make it in, book an appointment, and work with your media developers. But if you can't, there is always room we feel for informal media in a course. However, we do say that we would not want informal media to be used for your main course lecture content. Of course, we would want that to be the green screen lectures. But really, informal media is mainly used for quick, real-time announcements to address current events in relation to the course. Or you can also use informal media to address if you're getting a whole bunch of like the same question that students have about an assignment. You can address it with like a quick video that you recorded at home or in your office. So you don't have to, wait for a media developer. You don't have to wait for an appointment. This is something that you can create kind of quickly on the fly. And some benefits to having informal media is it does help with having a more authentic instructor presence throughout a course. Because, students see that you're actively adding media, you're actively engaging with them as they're asking questions. So they're not just, speaking to the void or like a TA or something. And it also allows for a greater variety of media experiences in a course. And there is a lot less planning, obviously, than formal media. However, you mainly do want that formal media spread throughout a course with maybe like a little bit of informal media sprinkled throughout. Okay, I want to touch on what makes media high quality since we've been mentioning high quality media so much. So when I say high quality media, we're really looking at high resolution video and imagery. The instructor is lit well, easy to see. Also, the audio sounds clear with no background noise or audible distractions. And all of this, of course, can be achieved by working with your media developers. So I have a couple thumbnail images from some videos that we have. I'm going to see if I can link those in the actual course for you all. So you actually have like a video example to look off of. But just so you can kind of visually see, you've got like a really nice green screen lecture on top here. And then this bottom part is more of like a storytelling type lecture. But regardless, instructors well lit on both of them. You can tell there was some sort of production value put into this. And as a student, you really will see the difference between something like this versus something like this. So this is what we would consider low quality media. Just to give you a look at what not to do if you were to ever create like informal media at home. Never want to upload anything that looks like this to your online course. But you should never, yeah, want to have like backlight be behind you like this, like sitting in front of a window to where the light's shining behind you as opposed to in front of you is a big no. Um, Also, this is not a great angle. If I were watching, even if this was like a quick announcement video and, my instructor, this was the view of them, as a student, I wouldn't feel like I would want to watch the rest of this video, just because, it just seems so like low effort. Um, and then also low quality media has very noisy and distracting audio usually. Again, this was like an actual video example, and I'll see if I can get that linked for you all. But the original video to this, there's like a low like hum or hiss, so not a very good mic. I actually don't think he was using a mic for this and was using just the internal laptop mic, which we always encourage you to try to get a separate mic, even if it's like a little headphone mic. This will always be better than the internal laptop mic. So this is why we encourage instructors to work with media developers when they can, because there are just a lot of recording considerations for quality course media. And all of this could be handled by a media developer, which is why it's great to work with them. And then just to remind everyone again of some of the awesome possibilities you can create with the academic media team. Of course, a bulk of your course media is going to be that green screen lecture content. However, that doesn't mean that there isn't potential to try new ways of delivering your information. There's field shoots, discussion panels. If you do have some graphic designers, you might be able to do some like little animated sequences or even just like some cool graphics. And then also, any labs or demos if you have more of that science-y or hands-on type of course. And I do want to mention instructional designers have found it helpful to physically show faculty media examples of potential like media types that they can create for their course. So it might be helpful to have like a slide or infographic, something similar to this with like video examples linked that you can share out to instructors who haven't ever, recorded formal media in a studio before, or they've never worked with a media team. Just giving them a little bit of background and examples of possibilities sometimes can really open up their minds to the capabilities of the media team, but also, what they can actually do for their course outside of just doing maybe like the standard green screen lecture. All right, so now let's talk a bit about tips for instructors and instructional designers when booking and recording in the media studio. As I showed in the last media type slide, it can be very helpful to show instructors the variety of media types they can create for their lecture content. It also would be beneficial to instructors to have either a scheduled in-person or a virtual studio tour. It's super helpful for instructors who haven't been in the studio yet to record or really any media studio. This would help give them an idea of the space that they'll be recording in. And, it can help just worm out any lingering nerves about not being able to come in to the studio before their appointment. This just really helps kind of ease that bridge before recording. Because I know sometimes it is I don't want to say it's a big difference, but it's a new thing if you are an instructor who is maybe used to speaking to students in person or to a class, and then now you're switching to an online space, or you just haven't, given a lecture in front of just a camera before and nobody else. It's definitely something that it takes time and practice. But we do also recommend if an instructor is really nervous about their first time recording in front of the camera, it does really help to start with a recording session with just like a fun and quick instructor introduction video or doing like an instructor bio. Just giving the students, a little bit of background about you as a person, who you are, why you wanted to teach the course, just fun little information like that, just to get, you warmed up with speaking and everything. That really does help before going into the main bulk of the lecture content. All right, so scheduling a studio appointment, we really do recommend instructors be proactive with scheduling ahead of time. Studios tend to get fully booked around that start of the semester. So if you procrastinate and you wait a little too late, you might find that the studio is like booked 2 weeks before the semester starts, and then now you can't get in to, record any maybe last minute lecture videos that you needed to. So really important, again, to have that media plan in place and developed with your ID before scheduling a studio appointment. And then you'll also just want to keep in mind scheduling enough time for the amount of videos needed. And this is always like a good time when you're scheduling. If you have any questions at all, like do communicate with your media developers before booking the appointments. That's always going to be a bigger time saver as opposed to trying to maybe fix things at the appointment or figuring out you have nearly not enough time that you booked for that you actually needed. So, just things like that. This will definitely help avoid if you're just a little bit more proactive. Recording in the studio, it's really important as an instructor recording lectures in the studio to try to treat your delivery like you're talking to an in-person class. It really does help with online lecture experience when the instructor is clearly present and engaged throughout the media of an online course. And also that we aren't, also just remember, we aren't asking you to be perfect. The finalized video is going to be cut up and polished by the media developers. And so just know there are going to be natural stutters and pauses throughout a lecture that won't be edited out by the media developers, and that's okay. Students really like to think that their online instructor is a real person and not a robot. So just remember to have fun when delivering your lecture content for your course media, because that's really a big important thing, and that does show um, throughout your course media. It does like show through it, and I know students can definitely tell the difference as well. But this is all I have for you all today. So please, if you have any questions at all, go ahead and feel free to put them in the chat now. And we'll see if we can help address any of those. And we also have a lovely webinar survey QR code right here, if you all can take that. And I think the link might also be dropped in the chat. Yeah, get this in here. Oh, thank you so much, Kim. Yeah, please let us know what questions you all have. And again, really appreciate everyone's time today. Thank you.
Mhm. Perfect. Thank you, Aubrey, for the detailed insights on the process of designing and developing media. I think from what we saw from the previous webinar session, there's a lot of collaboration from the instructional designer, the multimedia developers, and in some cases, it also goes to, for example, the student workers in those measures. See a lot of interaction on the chat. To just kick us off as we wait for the question, as you mentioned from the previous webinar, there's a lot of collaboration. So at what point does an instructor reach out to the multimedia developer? At what point do they reach out to those managing the studios in terms of developing their content?
Yeah, no, great question. I would definitely say after they have formed at least that general media plan with their instructional designer. So they've already been in talks with their instructional designer on what course media they need, maybe like a best approach to it. Again, feel free to link in a media developer during that talk if you need it. If you're like, oh, we have an idea, we want to try this, we need to talk to, a media person just to see if it's actually doable. That's always a good time to link them in there. But then I would say after you have formed your media plan, as in like you're like, okay, I've got this one course, I've got 8 modules, I need, 8 module videos and maybe like an introduction video. So you need to record 9 videos total. Then when you have that planned, I would say that's a good time to get in talks with the media developer and book. Although do remember that you're going to want your scripts and your slide decks to be done before your studio appointment. So however you want to figure that out time-wise, you could have that all done before you even book the appointment. But I know sometimes it's better just to get the appointment booked because again, the media studios do get booked up pretty quickly, especially around those starts of the semesters. So just better to be a little bit more proactive on that.
Perfect. I see a lot of thank yous on the chat section. And I think Elizabeth has something to share, and
I actually want to jump in, and Aubrey, I know this isn't fair because you're a multimedia developer, but if you had, let's say your cousin was a college professor and they say, you know what, my school doesn't have a multimedia studio. We don't have any of those resources. So I can't put videos in my class. How would you respond and kind of guide them? Because I think we all can see from all the things that you've taught us that having videos are really important. So what would you tell them to do?
I would say, I mean, yeah, if you don't have access to that media studio or a media developer, that I know we listed it as like the informal media route, but that's kind of all you have in the moment. So work with what you have. I would say a video that is self-created by the instructor and is still like a video delivery of them giving their lecture, even if it's recorded at home on a laptop, is going to be better than no video content at all. So I would just
So
say,
maybe
yeah,
getting into a Zoom room
yes, yeah, you can
and
use Zoom.
sharing the slides.
Mm-hmm. I know OBS is also a great free like screen recording resource. Zoom is probably easier to use, but OBS is nice if you have, a lot of multiple screens and whatnot. But yeah, I would just say
And
utilize what you can, even if, it doesn't look like that super high production value quality, that is still going to be 100% better than not having anything at all.
perfect. And you just follow the same rules,
Right.
chunkable,
Yeah.
small.
Just like with the my slide on like high quality media versus low quality, just at least ensure that your home recording doesn't look like the low quality media. Get some sort of light in front of you. If you have, natural light to use, that's awesome. Maybe sit in front of the window, but have your camera in front of the window instead of behind. So you have the light shining in front of you as opposed to behind you. And then, yeah, just making sure, kind of like this, you just have a decent angle, that you don't have like a massive amount of headroom. And then, really, audio is also kind of key with the self-recorded stuff. Like I mentioned, these are pretty cheap earbuds. So, even like a mic connected to earbuds is going to be better than like an internal computer mic or like an internal monitor mic.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Now, I think we did have a couple in the document. Uh, I'll verbalize this and we'll drop the link. All of the videos that we've done in these multimedia webinars and even all of the webinars that we've done, all of those links are available on the e-learning resources site, and we'll get that link dropped into the chat. We also are going to turn this multimedia video webinar series into a course with a lot of resources. So like Aubrey just mentioned, OBS is a screen capture tool. I know we've mentioned some in a couple of other spaces for some self-editing and things like that. So we do know some tools, so we'll have those in the course. So all of those will be in the course available to you, and we're expecting that out in the next couple of weeks. So watch the Ishi space. We'll definitely send out an announcement too. But I'll turn it back to David for moderating the questions that I know we threw over in that document.
perfect. Thank you, Elizabeth. And I see we do have a question from Alaza. And I think we a little bit covered this question in the previous webinars, but Aubrey, if you can expound on it, in the sense that we have different faculty members in different disciplines, for example, medicine, engineering, and other disciplines, and maybe the modalities might not be the same. How do I go as an instructor? How do I start creating the content, for example, if I'm in a medical space?
No, yeah, that's a great question. I know I'm just going to speak to at least my experiences and what I know, but to that, I would say it's better, or sorry, let me just like regain my thoughts. Can you repeat the question one more time for me, David?
So in terms of different faculty members coming from different disciplines, engineering, medicine, some, for example, in communication, how do we start, for example, in field like medicals or engineering, which might require a lot of work?
Okay, yep, no, I think I understand it now. Yeah, so I mean, the different disciplines are always going to come with their own nuances as far as media required for those courses. So like I know for a lot of our chemistry and science type courses, even engineering, that's when we do try to do a lot of those demos and labs. Because I know with a lot of that, it's a lot of like hands-on experiments. You might just need to see things in real time as opposed to watching, a video with B-roll isn't necessarily going to cover the information that a student needs to see. Um, I will say, I mean, the green screen lecture content is standard if you can and you have the capabilities of green screen. If not, then again, that keeping that instructor presence, but having, you recording your lectures, how you would I'm assuming there might be some sort of standards or something. I know every school runs it a little bit different. Um, at least here, I know within like each school, there's like different standards that faculty have to consider for their course of like, oh, you need to have this in the course, you need to have this. So I would just consider those and then just do what you can with the resources that you have. If you have the capabilities of doing and you need to do some sort of hands-on, experiment, maybe you're working with like a circuitry board or something. I would try to make that work, even if it's something that you have to film on your own. Um, you know, Cell phones are a great thing. Most of them have cameras in them too. This is again, if you don't have that media developer to kind of assist you with these types of shoots. But I would say there are going to be natural differences between the different disciplines as far as the media might be a little bit different. Like I know our engineering courses are a little bit more obviously maybe information heavy in the sense of there might be slightly more text heavy things as opposed to, more of like an artistic discipline. So it does just depend, but I think sticking to a set of standards that you have set, whether that is set, by your school or whoever, just kind of leaning in on that and then talking with your instructional designers, talking with your media developers, and seeing where you can go from there as far as creating maybe different types of media if you feel like you need something more than just a standard, talking head lecture.
Perfect. And I think I would also say, share my experience
Mhm.
when I was at ASU in my undergrad, in one of my biology classes. We did have practicals done online, and that was something that I'd never seen before. I couldn't believe that you could use a microscope and a specimen. And I do know that different institutions are at different levels, but I think it also be good to check on what other institutions are doing, what is out there in the world, and what we can incorporate in our context. And the next question, I'll pose it to Elizabeth. Looking back, when you started designing the multimedia content, what were your scares, the challenges that you foresee, for example, for some of the faculty members that are just starting the process, and how did you overcome them, and any advice that you'd offer to someone who is just starting?
Yeah, I think when we first started designing this series, we really wanted to kind of debunk a lot of the fears around multimedia, because I know a lot of folks really feel that in order to have videos in your course, there's a super high cost involved, and that it takes a really long time. And so I think we wanted to show, that you don't have to go for Hollywood. There may be some instances, I know, study hall videos and some of the things that ASU has done. Obviously, we've got some really cool, high production, like After Effects and special effects and special graphics. That doesn't have to be there for all of that. and there definitely may be some instances where you're describing a process, or maybe you're trying to break down a cell where you're like, yeah, I really want a graphic where it takes the cell and then breaks it down so we can stop and talk about each piece. And yeah, and that might be really something that really works for that context. But maybe you could just, do a slide deck where you have some pictures that exist already on the internet, Creative Commons and, stock photos of things that would work, or from your publisher. So there are definitely some like good, better, best kind of approaches. And I think that's what we're trying to show here, is that there are a lot of different kinds of video that can enhance. And don't also discount that the internet may have already created a video that's just perfect for what you need, especially, like some concept that's really, really well known, like cell mitosis. There may be some YouTuber out there who is just obsessed about cell mitosis, who's done an amazing, animation of cell mitosis. And you can just deploy that video in your course, and then you talk about, the other things around it. So just I think that's really where we were going, is trying to break down some of the myths of how difficult it is. I know there's multimedia studios available. I know there's not enough for everybody to have for every single course. So I think that's the other part of, just trying to help everybody understand how these resources can be used, how you can kind of do a little bit of good, better, best combination of informal, formal media. I know for the course that I currently teach online, I only have informal media. Now, I don't teach at ASU, and I do have some videos that other people have created, but I don't have a whole lot. I have one of me in my dining room, really nice backdrop. I've got some good lighting. I got my laptop set up on a couple of books so that I'm not looking down at the camera, and I put in a headset and I talk to my students. And I recorded, I think, a 5 to 10 minute video for every week so that they see my face. And again, that the establishing instructor presence. I know we had a question about that, but really being able to establish that instructor presence, them seeing your face in conjunction with some content, is a really important component of what that video is. And that's all I did for my course. So again, having a starting place. One of these days I might sneak into a studio and get some full production and do some fun animations in that. But I think getting started is the good important part, and then always there. And I think just to that point, to say, ask the question of just minimal equipment required for designing and recording academic media. Most laptops these days have a camera built in. And for informal media, if that's all you have, it's a good starting place. And if your laptop or your desktop doesn't have a webcam, there are also relatively inexpensive ones. And maybe your department could go in and just buy one for your department if nobody's laptops have them. I'm pretty sure somewhere, I don't know how to translate this into borough, but $40-50 for a high definition webcam that has a little tripod that you can just literally, that's what your department needs. If you don't do that, and AirPods that connect to your laptop, whether they connect with a wire, so that your audio comes through clearly. Aubrey, maybe a ring light? I think that would be probably the other thing. I think you can, for under $100 with your existing laptop, get started. Aubrey, does
Oh,
that
yeah.
feel like
Yeah, no,
what I
definitely.
miss?
I would even mention, I mean, I'm assuming people would have laptop, even like cell phone. Of course, you don't really want to record vertically, but if your cell phone camera is better than like a laptop camera or even a webcam that you have access to, that might be a better option, even just to record the video of you in like a higher quality. And then, if you have like your slide deck behind it or something, or even if it's just you, like that would work too. And then, yeah, small ring light, maybe you can get for like $20. Again, yeah, I don't know the conversion there. But also don't underestimate natural light is sometimes all that you need. Just like a nice window will really like fill in everything just perfectly.
Shining on the things.
Yeah.
Perfect. I get a lot of getting started, and I feel a lot of confidence that our participants, some of them have started developing the multimedia content. And again, I would give it to Aubrey. If you have any parting shot, then I will turn it over to Elizabeth to just wrap it up.
Yeah, I just want to say thank you all again for being here throughout these few webinars. I really appreciate it. I hope that I gave you some valuable information that you'll be able to use, and I just really appreciate everyone's time. Thank you so much.
Perfect. And I've also seen one of the participants asking if, for example, I didn't attend the first and the second webinar, where can I get the recording? The link has been shared on the chat. You have all the resources on the e-learning resources page available for you, and you can always refresh your mind on the content.
David,
Yes,
sorry, would you mind? I think that people are having a hard time finding the previous recordings because you do have to scroll down a little bit. Would you be able to get into that site and scroll down to the media place just to show people where they are? Because we're getting this question quite a bit and I don't think people are finding it.
okay.
That would be helpful. Thank you. And if you can't, if you have a hard time with that, I can get it up there. But I don't have access to share right now. Thank you. All right, here I'll share. So just so people know where this is, so when I'm giving this link, if you scroll down, you will see other items on top, so that might be a little bit confusing. But if you scroll down until you see this little header with the academic media, these are the previous recordings. So you might have to scroll down a little bit, but I promise it's there, and the presentation slides. And within the next couple of days, you'll have this one here as well. So all of the content is there. You'll be able to find it. You just have to scroll down a little bit. I hope that helps.
Yeah, and I think some of the things that we talked about in terms of designing your slides and all of that, some of those earlier webinars with the orange and red circles talk about some of those. So you really, I think all of those other webinars have a lot of really good resources available for you. So make sure you browse around some of the other ones. And like I said, we're going to package all three webinars, or all three multimedia webinars into a course to really walk you through the process. What you need. There'll be, sections for each of the different, kind of audiences involved in video production. So we'll have that there for you. So looking forward to hearing from you all. If there's no other questions, I think we have it all covered. We thank you all for joining us at the tail end of your day, and look forward to seeing you in a future webinar. Stay tuned for kind of the next webinar on helping everybody move into the online learning space. And Makasha, did you have a question? Oh, if we had folks who wanted to unmute and ask their questions live, I think we have a couple of minutes. We could do that.
There were also a few questions in the chat that we could answer. So
yeah, I thought I caught all of them.
Sorry, not in the
Is there
Q&A.
anything
It was over in the chat area.
Yeah, what did I miss? I thought I caught them all.
Let's see. Copyright. Did we go over copyright? Maybe that one was discussed.
We did not. You definitely want to follow copyright rules and laws. And just as a general rule, there is in the international sphere a thing called fair use for educational purposes. And when you are using a piece of content for educational purposes only, so you're not making money off of it, you can use, I believe the cut is 10% of a given resource. So if you say have 10% of a textbook that you want to put into your course without talking to that publisher, you can do that. 10% of a video that's out there. Typically, if a video is out on YouTube, you are free to take that YouTube link and paste it into your course. What you're not free to do is take that YouTube video, strip it down, chop it up into pieces, and put it into your video. So, because that would be basically demonetizing what someone else has made on theirs. If you use their wet YouTube video, they get the YouTube views. And so that helps them. And so they don't have a problem with people reusing if it's a publicly available YouTube link. Um, if you're using images, there are lots. I think we mentioned this before, there's a place called Wikimedia Commons, which has, if it's a historical event or a historical figure, that's a really great place to get royalty-free images of things that have happened, either in history or famous people, or even diagrams, things of that nature. And there are other kind of royalty-free resources for images. So just do be careful that, especially if you're using somebody else's resources, just give them credit. The little tiny thing in the bottom goes a long way to kind of resolving all of those copyright issues. You just say, got this image from Wikimedia Commons, and it's a little line right in the bottom of the screen. Thanks for highlighting that, Kim. Now, did we have folks who wanted to unmute and ask a question? Or did we get your questions with?
There might be one other that was in the chat. How do you balance switching back and forth between a screen recording and the instructor? Did we answer that one already?
Oh,
I don't know if we did. Yeah, Aubrey, what would you say? Is there a ratio of
I would
if you're
say, yeah. Because I don't think we actually touched on this. If you're speaking of like whether it be either like a home recording of like you giving a lecture or a green screen recording of a lecture content, I mean, I would say at least with what we do, we always try to keep the instructor on the screen, just in one of the bottom corners. Of course, that the video does get cut up, so we cut out any pauses or anything in between, which is always okay. If you want to cover that up, I would say adding in like some video or a video, or sorry, photo or video like B-roll over your cuts is an easy way to hide if you're like, oh, I like this section where I'm like speaking, but I want this section maybe to be covered up or something. I would say it's totally fine to cover up your cuts with like B-roll and whatnot. But as far as like main lecture content, we try to have the instructor on the screen as much as possible, if that answers your question.
So if you're showing a very complicated diagram and there's not space for you and the diagram on the screen, it's okay to take you off the screen for a minute, show the diagram, show the clip of whatever movie so that you're not in the way, but
Yeah,
then come back.
absolutely. Mm-hmm.
There's no such thing as too much instructor presence.
Very true.
That's everything I've seen in the chat. So I think we covered that.
All right. Well, we do ask you all to pretty please complete our survey. Go visit the e-learning resources site. We will get the video from this webinar up as soon as possible. We'll probably be sending out an email announcement when the full course is ready for you. stay tuned for the next exciting adventures in our operations training of helping you all move into the online space. Have a great afternoon.